All right, everybody, we have got Kate Elliott back with us. It has been a little while, but I have been wanting to talk to you ever since The Witch Roads came out because that book was awesome. Uh,
Thank you.
Question for you. I know that I'm doing this out of order, but it's driving me crazy. I got to know. I saw this as listed as a duology.
Yes.
All right. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right. So, everybody who doesn't know, and I'm sure pretty much everybody probably already knows who Kate Elliott is, but I do like to ask every author these days, what is your supervillain origin story?
So I came up with a short version and a long version. And the short version was that I was a teenager, early teens, when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to join a interstellar exploratory mission, that it didn't look like that was going to happen in my lifetime anyway. And also that there were no portals opening into another like world that would be more interesting to me as a teenager, as teenagers are, or some the geeky ones like me. And so my best option was to write.
Gotcha.
That
Well, I
that
mean,
was,
yeah,
yeah.
if you can't find a parallel world that you want to live in, why not write your own?
That's right. I mean, that's like, it's not perfect, but it's acceptable. But there is actually a more serious answer to this question, which is that I'm old. So when I was a girl, there was a lot. We live in a sexist society, and oftentimes, unfortunately, quite a misogynistic society, as well as all the many other isms that our society deals with. But as a girl, I heard a lot more than girls do today, or differently than they do today. But how girls were supposed to be, what they couldn't do. It was mostly what they couldn't do, what they ought to do. And it was just constant. It was like fish swimming in the water. You just, for a lot of people, they either didn't know how to question it, or didn't know it could be questioned, or didn't know how to deal with things. Uh, didn't know how to deal with things that they couldn't somehow get out of. A good friend of mine, who's actually about 10 years older than me, had a excuse me, excuse me, fan, fan, none of that.
Finn wants to be included. We'll be taking a short break while Finn goes outside.
Sorry, it could
It's all good.
he could have stopped right then, or he could have kept going. He's a schnauzer. They do
I
that.
understand.
So a friend of mine, she had a friend who went to college, which would have been unusual in those days. That's would have been in the 60s, and got a chemistry degree, which would also have been unusual. This woman was really into chemistry. She was clearly someone who should have been a scientist, but that option wasn't there for her for whatever reason, because of the way where the family background she had. I don't know. So when they got together, she would literally go on at length about the organic and inorganic compounds and the chemical composition of things like laundry detergent. That's how frustrated this poor woman was. I mean, I hope later in life, as things change, that she got to do something that met her intellectual capacity. And I don't say that to say that, taking care of a home or raising children are bad things. They're not. I have 3 kids, and um, but women, women don't have to be, and in many societies aren't restricted to these very narrow roles. So part of my superhero villain origin story is that I thought, well, if I'm writing the book, then I get to control what the people in the book do. And so for me, it was just a way to write people, including women and other people, getting to do things that when I was a girl, I was told weren't allowed for me, or I shouldn't want to do, or things like that. So it was just kind of that was something I could do to push
Mhm.
back against all that terrible, terrible messaging and pressure. that was put on people like me.
Right. And I kind of like the fact that you brought that up because it's a weird timing. I was reading a brief article this morning, and a lot of times we think of actors and actresses. We don't always we think of them as pretty faces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Rosie Perez was on today, and she was talking about the fact that if she had not met Spike Lee, she was studying to be a marine biologist. That was her goal in life.
Oh.
So I mean, that's she.
Yeah.
That's not a job for stupid people. She was in there. She was ready to go. That was her whole plan. So yeah, the fact that there's options that
Yeah.
were not available, especially as people of a certain age were coming up. Going to say hi to a couple quick people popped into the chat. One I know you already know because I saw you on her channel when she was interviewing you for the Witch Road. So Josefina from Fina Reads, who also likes doggo.
Hi.
And then Kayi also popped in and she wanted to say doggos. We like dogs around here. What can we say?
I would
All
if
right.
I could
And
get
then,
if I could get him to sit on my lap, I would, but he will not he won't get on my lap when I'm in my desk chair.
It happens.
Yeah.
All right. And then a couple other quick questions. And of course, I want to talk to you about the book. But another question I like to ask authors these days, especially for the aspiring writers in here, because I want them to see that not everybody's the same. But when it comes to writing, what does a day in the life of Kate Elliott look like?
So it really depends. A day in the life of Kate Elliott has changed a lot over the last 30 years because before I was published, I was working and then I would write maybe when I wasn't working or on the weekends, I would find time to write. It was something I carved out. And then I happened to be one of those odd people. I actually sold a novel and was pregnant with my first child at the same time. So a lot of my writing career took place while I was kind of the on-call at-home parent because I could write and be at home at the same time. So it worked out well for me. I also have enough pig-headed discipline that I could do it. Not everybody can, and not everybody needs to be able to do it. For some people, taking care of small children is enough. It's like overwhelming enough, and maybe they get scraps and pieces here, or they say I'll do it when they get older or something. And there isn't a right way to do it, to negotiate that, to caregiving. But I was able to, partly because I would have gone crazy if I didn't have like an outlet. And so when they were little, it was like, oh, I have 15 minutes. I'm going to write now. Oh, no, someone's screaming. I better go check. Right. And then when they went to school, I would write when they were at school. So it was like very much clicked in and out. Then when they all grew up and moved out, then I had to readjust because I had learned patterns about got to go right now, got to sit down right this second. And now it was like, well, I don't have to sit down right this second. And so now it's more like I get up, I walk my dog, I exercise, I eat my breakfast, and then I'll procrastinate for an hour, and then I work. And I kind of sometimes I get a lot done, sometimes I don't get much done. I try to restrict my working to the weekdays, otherwise I burn out. And so I treat it like a job because it is a job, but it's also a creative work. So it's complicated because sometimes the creative work might be thinking for 2 days about like, how are they going to get into the vault? And it might take me 2 days to figure it out. That's work, even though if I haven't written a single word. So I've learned to balance, like, it's not just word count, it's how much you're thinking about the story. So these days, it's kind of like a job. I get up, I get ready for work, and then at the end of the day, I'm done, eat my dinner, do whatever.
Gotcha. And I have to agree with this one. We'll get into it in a little bit. We're going to get back to that. And, we're going to talk about that ending as much as we can without spoiling anything. Let's put it that way. But yeah, the other thing too, and you kind of touched on it. I think there's way too many people that get focused on that word count thing.
Yes.
But again, especially like some days, especially like, let's say you get into editing, that may be a negative word count by the time you're done because you're trimming stuff up. And so if you just focus on that word count, it's like, I didn't get anything done today. I have less words than I started with. But yeah, you did a lot of work.
So there's so many levels to this, to in terms of how we approach writing. And my number one rule is that if it if this is what, it's not my number one rule, but anyway, if this is how you can get things done, then it's good for you. There isn't like, other people have processes that work for them, but there isn't a process that works for everybody. There's what works for you, and then there's what works for you on this book. Um, One of the hardest lessons I had to learn, again, when my children were little, were that sometimes life happens and you can't get anything done. And that is not a failure, it's just a pause. And it might be a day, maybe your child is sick and you have to take them to the doctor, or maybe you're a caretaker for someone, or maybe you yourself get sick and you are sick for 4 days, and with whatever. And it's and that I never want people to feel like they're somehow falling behind. You're not falling behind. You're doing what you need to do
Hmm.
to stay healthy, to take care of others, to take care of yourself. So I think that a focus purely on some kind of a metric is good only if it's helpful to you. So when I'm in the middle of first drafting, I do like a metric. I do say, well, I'm going to try to write 2,000 words every day until I have my first draft done.
Hmm.
That helps me, because then if it's like I'm writing and I'm kind of, my brain's wandering because I'm tired and I think, oh, I'm at 1698. Okay, I'm just going to plow through and get 300 more words and then I can stop. That helps me. On a day where things just aren't going well and I get 500 words done, or on a day when I have to think a lot about something, then I say, okay, that's all right. This was a different day. But that's first drafting, when my goal is to get the whole story down. And again, people work differently. Some people constantly are rewriting as they go. I really need to have a complete first draft, because I don't really fully understand the book until I have a complete first draft. That may not be true for everybody. Some people outline extensively before they start writing. Some people
Hmm.
just, each chapter has to be perfect before they can go on to the next one. It just doesn't matter. It only matters what works for you. But in my case, when I'm revising, I don't even look at word count. It's not,
Right.
word count to me is not important during revision. It's just like, at most if I have a set amount of time to do a set of revisions, like, can you get this back to me in 4 weeks? And I'll say, okay, this is 400 pages. At minimum, I need to revise 100 pages a week.
Right.
And if I do more than that, it's fine. If I do less, I need to do just to meet the deadline. But beyond that, I don't even think about it. I just
Nice.
do the work.
All right. And then last question I've got before we talk about the book a little bit. Aspiring author comes up to you and asks for a bit of advice. Doesn't have to be writing advice, but it can be, but just author advice. What's one thing you would want to tell them?
I just would always want to tell people to read widely, experience the world as widely as is plausible for you. The I am not a fan of reading, like, let's say, a fantasy novel where it looks like the person's research has been reading other fantasy novels and watching a few Hollywood films set in, let's say, a faux medieval era, because a
Hmm.
lot of times that stuff is A, inaccurate, B, watered down. So you're really doing, it's a photocopy of a photocopy of a
Right.
photocopy. Um, People don't have to have PhDs to write fantasy or science fiction. I would just encourage people to read, so that, because reading and traveling, if that's feasible. I mean, reading, you can go to the library and check out books if you don't have the money to buy a lot of books, if you have a library nearby. And not everybody can travel, but you can watch things on TV. But what happens is, when you widen your knowledge base, when your landscape gets bigger, you have more to draw on.
Mhm.
So if someone says, well, the only empire I want to write a story about an empire, so I guess I'll do the Romans because that's the only empire they've heard of. But actually, there's many empires one could draw from. But if you don't know that, you can't draw from them.
Mhm.
So I just am a big believer. And I will say here that my dad taught history. So that's where I come by it probably. Is that the more you know, the richer your idea base is and your inspiration base is. That spring of inspiration that you can drink from.
Yeah, I think you make a good point too, though. If you only know one thing, and like let's say it's like Romans are done out. I want to do something in the British Empire, but all you know is the Roman Empire, and you try to write something British, but everybody's like, okay, you just put some British names on the Roman Empire. It's like that's not going to work out too well. People are going
Yeah.
to know.
Right. And
I'm sure.
also you don't have to, there's so it you don't have to draw on history for
Right.
inspiration, but history's so big and so global and occurs across so many thousands of years that there's so much there that can be adapted or used as inspiration.
I think I agree with you on that too. It's not that. I mean, obviously, you can make an empire out of whole cloth. That this is what you want to do. You don't have to copy the Romans or the British, but if you start with that, it could definitely be a framework. And I feel like that's going to cut down how much work you have
Yes.
to do.
Well, the thing is, I I don't think that I believe that we cannot create things out of whole cloth because we're creating things again to come back to that. The cloth that we have, which
Mhm.
is, what we know. So if that's all we know, it's going to keep circling. It's going to keep looking like that. Um, but the other thing about history is, as you say, it's a framework. We don't have to write a faux Roman story where everyone has faux Roman names or a faux
Mhm.
Chinese story where everyone has faux Chinese names. But we can look at, say, the frontier between Tang China and the nomadic empires and say, this is interesting. What is there about that I can take? I don't have to give everybody fake Chinese names and fake nomadic Turkic names, but I can. It's the dynamic. What history gives us is a dynamic. So that's that's where the more you know, the more complicating and interesting your world and events can be. If it's just there's the usurped king, right? The young prince or princess has been usurped by their evil relative. I mean, this is a great story, but there are other ways. There are other things to write. And there are different ways to write that. I'm sorry. This is just one of my
No, no.
one of my things that I think about a lot.
I'm asking you questions because we want to know what
Oh,
you
okay.
say,
Yeah.
not what I already think. In fact, Kai had a little comment in here, and I believe she's writing a book if she hasn't already. So she's really appreciating what you had to say on this. But to nicely smooth it in, a nice little segue. Let me see if I can pull that back up again. I don't. I had the ebook, so I don't have a copy. So I wanted to show everybody this is book 2 in a 2-book series called The Nameless Land. But one of the things I want to say about that too is I feel like it's really helpful. Especially like what you did in Nameless Land. Yes, it's a fake world and stuff like that, but you use words that you don't have to explain to your readers. Readers
Yeah.
really appreciate it if you just say it's a prince instead of coming up with some name for the exact same role because it's in your fantasy league or your fantasy league in your fantasy story.
Yeah. There are times where I think there's a lot of utility in using a different name, a
Mm,
made up name, if the role has something about it that doesn't quite fit. But in this case, the emperor is an emperor. So
yeah.
why call it something else? And so for me, the complicating issue for the duology was that this is a world in which gender plays very little part in what people are allowed to do. And I had to think about, well, at the beginning of the whole project, do I want to say emperor? So I already knew, sorry, I'm backtracking. I
Of course.
already knew that the emperor could be either male or female. It wasn't, it didn't matter. Um, but I also knew I didn't want to use the word empress and I didn't want to use the word princess because those words have different meanings. People bring different ideas about what that role is. So that meant I had to pretty early on in the Witch Road to make it clear that the emperor could be either male or female and that it wasn't a gendered word and that prince is the same. Prince is a position of someone
Mhm.
who has a kind of power, which is really mostly that theoretically they could become emperor. And that was a little complicated to do to make so that people would understand it. So when I say prince this or prince that, you don't necessarily know whether that prince is male or female.
I have to say, I can't remember exactly when I figured it out, but I think you handled it well in the fact that I was never confused when
Oh,
it said
good.
Prince and it was a female character. Is like I could tell exactly what you were doing. Um, kind of like the new thing is a lot of times that they want to be called actors, not actors and actresses. There doesn't have to be a gender; it's still a role.
Right.
You're
Right.
performing the same role.
Yeah.
So
So there's probably, so there is, I recently turned in a book in this same setting with different characters. And in that one, I do spend a little time with the hierarchical gradations within the manors, which have three different names to reference three different levels of where you fit in a manor. And that one I felt I had to do because the English words didn't get the differences. There was
mhm,
no way to use an English word that could show me the difference. So there's servants, but then there's servants with a certain level of rights, and then there's servants with a much lower level of rights, but they're not slaves. So I used made up words, which I define, hopefully not too clunkily, right? So
well, no, but
so sometimes you have to
right.
do
I mean,
it.
the made up
Yeah.
words make sense when they fit the story and they're required.
Yeah. But otherwise, I think it's better um, to use familiar words for people because they're already wading into this made up world in which things are different. So the less I figure that the less they have to struggle with learning stuff, the better. It makes that entry easier.
Yeah, I think Chad's got a good point too. Because let's face it, English can be confusing enough on its own, where word can have multiple meanings, and it's all about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
context.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's get into the book a little bit. This is book 2, so we're going to avoid spoilers like the plague in case because book 1 just came out this year. It's not like we're talking about a series where book 1 has been out 5 years and it's your own fault if you didn't read it. They both dropped this year, which I happen to love too, by the way.
Well,
Even
I wrote the whole story in one go. So
I can see that.
yeah, I wrote the whole story in one go, and because it's long, Tor said we'd like to bring it out as a duology, and I knew where I could split it, which is in fact where it gets split. But I asked, but then I said, but please bring it out as close together as is feasible in publishing terms, and they did. So I'm really happy.
Yeah. All right, and then Fina's still apparently she hasn't left us yet. A job is a job, a person is a person. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
All right. One thing, and you just talked about how you split this and how you decided to split it. I just did the review for it today because I was trying to come in sideways so it'd be fresh in my brain. So I finished the last 4% of the book this morning. I stopped last night so I could have nope, I'm going to finish it in the morning. I really felt like book 1 versus book 2. Book 1 was very much, yes, there were perils, yes, there were dangers, but book 1 was we're going on an adventure. And book 2, I felt very much was like we're running for our lives.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
It cranked up. It put the pedal to the metal on book 2. So
Yeah,
love
I
that.
mean, and it just worked out that way. I didn't plan that in
Yep.
advance. I didn't say I'm going to structure it this way. That's just what happened.
But you may not have planned it that way, but I feel like it turned out perfectly because it really you said it was one book to begin with. It really feels like sometimes they have that book where you get to a certain point and it's like, now we're going to put the hammer down. And that just happened to be where you split it. It's like, we got up to this point. We've got a great cliffhanger. I know Fina was ready to strangle you. She may not have told you that out loud, but where you left off in book 1, she's like, I need book 2.
But I want to say in my own defense that one of the reasons I ended book 1 there is that, first of all, you get a huge piece of information about about Ellen's past. So now you understand her better. But also there is an emotional resolution at the end of book 1. So there is a sense that you can go, oh, okay, this part of the plot is, I don't have to be anxious about this part of the plot anymore. And those who have read it will know that it's the familial part of the plot. There's a resolution there. It's not that story's done. It isn't done, but there's a resolution there. And so for me, it worked because if books have to be split, and sometimes they do, I always hope to be able to find a place where you can kind of go, I want to know what happens next, but I can pause here.
Right.
I recently finished The Raven Scholar, which has the whole big plot thing that goes on in book 1 is resolved, but also you're left with right. So, and I thought that was well done. So we get a big resolution, but we also are waiting now, looking like, oh, when's book 2 coming?
Antonia Hodgson, I read that one too. That was a good one.
I thought it was a very well done. Yeah. I recommend it, by the way, anybody, The Raven Scholar. It's just, as a writer, she did a lot of things I super admire.
Nice.
She's a masterful, subtle setup person, using language to set things up that you don't. Anyway, it's very good. Yeah.
So here's an odd question for you, but I've never thought to ask an author about this.
Okay.
Goodreads, for instance, always has the little, description of the book and stuff like that. Is that anything you have to do with, or is that what the publishers pushed, or did Goodreads pull that out of thin air?
Usually, so publishers have to say something, and there's usually like a 1-sentence tagline that they'll use, the kind of thing that you could put on a book, will she win or will she lose?
Right.
A forgotten princess breaks her silence to try to gain the throne. Whatever, right? So it's just kind of like a general, and then the publisher will always have one of this, the cover copy.
Right.
Joan the Forgotten had been living in obscurity ever since her parents were killed in palace intrigue, but now a strange and very handsome individual has come to, tell her that people are rising up or whatever, right? So sometimes the publisher writes that. Sometimes the author writes a version and sends it to the publisher, and they use it like that, or they adapt it. Sometimes the publisher writes something and they send it to the author, and the author goes, right, and says, can I make a few changes? And usually nobody cares that much. So it just depends. Sometimes it's totally done in-house. Sometimes the author had a lot to do with it or made changes. And in general, they're a marketing. They're a market. Like the cover, they're there for marketing.
I was just curious because got to figure out who I needed to yell at, because it made me do a double take when I was writing down. I usually have the description up next to it as I'm doing a review, and I'm like looking at the description and I'm doing my review. I'm like, wait, who the heck is Aaron?
Oh, well,
Goodreads says Aaron instead of Ellen. I was like, what?
I don't know. That I don't know. That's
So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but I had always wondered, is like, I assumed it was the publicists of the publishers that kind of push those little descriptions out, because
I
I
don't,
know
yeah, I'm
how.
not quite sure who does that, but yeah.
Yeah, I just know how bad or how much authors love when they have to take their 500-page works and then people ask them for like a 3-paragraph blurb for it. Boil it down.
It's actually awful.
I
And
know, I know.
pitches are in to me, pitches are even worse, because
Mm,
if you have a complicated book with multiple characters who have different paths and emotional journeys and a complex plot, to boil it down to one sentence is it's I don't like it. There are books that you can boil down to one sentence because
yeah,
that's what they come from. And I call them premise books. Um,
right.
but it is what it is. This is where things are in the industry right now. When I started out, pitches were not a thing. And I remember when it started entering the scene about 20 years ago, and I thought, this will never last. It's stupid. Well, now I write them for my own books, right?
Yeah,
Because you have to.
right.
So here we are. I Unfortunately, I have a couple friends who are good at saying, "Oh, wait, what if we change these 3 words or whatever?" Anyway,
Those are good friends to have.
yes,
It's like,
yeah,
yeah, I can understand, when I do a review, I try not to make it too super long, like a good solid paragraph or two. But then I see people like to do the blurbs on the back of a book, and they usually want 1 or 2 sentences. And that usually can't tell you anything about that book. You can just tell somebody, I really liked it. Like, thanks for nothing.
yeah. I am sometimes asked to write quotes for people, and I've really tried to get away from the "I really loved this book" or "I stayed up all night reading this," because those don't really say anything. And now I'm trying to dig down and think. I try to find something a little more unusual. I just blurbed LD Lewis's forthcoming book, Year of the Mare, which is coming out next year, and it's like a fantasy riff on the Disney Little Mermaid.
Oh, okay.
And I can't quote it exactly, but I said something like, reading this book is like watching 2 runaway trains headed for a collision. Because I thought that gets to be
Hmm.
something what the feel of reading it is, because it is kind of like that. You see
Yeah.
the antagonist and the protagonist are like, you're waiting for the crash, right? But I also thought it's different. It's not like, I liked this book, highly recommended. I don't know. It's like, oh, something different.
So I don't know how often you get this, but one of my favorite characters from this duology is somebody who doesn't speak at all. And
Mm.
where did you get the idea for the gigast, and or how do you pronounce it? Gagast?
I say Gagast. Yeah.
Gagast.
I have to tell you, quite honestly, I don't know. The Witch Rose was a really bizarre experience. It was my kind of my Hail Mary pass. I'm sure I said this when I talked to you before, but in the spring of 2022, I went through a really bad writing experience, and I've been writing a long time, and I've had a lot of ups and downs in my career, but you plug on, right? You put your
Mhm.
shoulder to that wagon and you keep pushing. But this was for the first time, I thought, well, maybe I should just quit. And which is why the book has um, the acknowledgement up front that it does. And I've set aside the book well, no, I didn't start the book I was meant to write next. And instead, I thought, I didn't write at all for a couple weeks. And then I thought, well, here's this old thing that I've tried like 5 different ways to come into, but none of them quite work, and the world isn't really set, and I don't really know anything about it. So, but I kind of like this. Well, what if I tried it with this character? Let me see. She could be a humble deputy courier walking across the. That sounds good. And so I had vague ideas about. I knew that there was going to be a haunt, and as I wrote the opening chapter, I literally said, "Well, I don't want her to be alone. Oh, I know her nephew's with her because he's just at that age where he's going to have to declare for his profession because this is kind of a rigid hierarchical empire." And I literally that was kind of how this book went. So I had like vague things that I knew, but so I don't know.
Okay, I was just curious.
It was just like it just kind of like, well, what about this individual? Oh, I know, I'll just do this. And if they don't talk, then I don't have to have another person speaking in this ensemble. So that made my
Right.
life easier, right?
I just thought they had such a interesting comment. This isn't spoiler stuff because if you once you meet them, you're going to know this is going on. A, they start out really really big. B, Moonlight basically there's going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
sleep and then there's basically becoming a statue. I mean, that's not spoilers. That's book one stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And the way that they can protect themselves and stuff like that. And I just thought it was a really really interesting species that you designed. And then of course they none of them talk. So although apparently
Yeah.
they cook really really well.
Yes, and can test for poisons, which is very
Yeah.
helpful when you live in the palace full of
Yeah.
really terrible people.
Speaking of palace people, Lord Duen, do you know no redeeming qualities in that man whatsoever?
No, no, none.
Some people get like a redemption arc. That man has no redemption.
Not everybody gets a redemption arc, but
No, no.
furthermore, some people aren't even trying.
Do you
Some
find it?
people live their life that way.
Do you find it more fun to write a character where you can just leave them evil instead of figuring out how I'm going
No,
to get people to feel good about this person?
no. I
Oh,
actually find I I think people who are well, evil is a complicated term because anybody who's read the Crossroads trilogy knows that the person who it turns out is the antagonist is not evil, but is the antagonist, but you don't know.
hmm.
That's the whole point of the book, is that you don't know. Um, but I wouldn't call them evil in the way I would call Lord Dwen evil. But there are people like Dwen in this world. And I find them fairly uninteresting because they themselves are kind of narrow and withered. So there isn't they function they're obstacles and they're weapons that injure and hurt other people. But they themselves, I look at people like that and I think their interior lives must be quite dull.
Hmm.
What do? They drink, carouse, have sexual relations, probably with unwilling people or with people who only are with them because there's some kind of alliance or benefit to them. They, like to trample on people and force other people to do their bidding, and they think that they are owed all that. That's not very interesting. I, I just, someone like Gevelin to me is more interesting.
True.
For as you know, because I allow him more interest.
Yeah. His character grows during the course of these two books, at
Yes,
least.
yeah. I didn't plan that, but it ended up, he's not stupid. He's a smart guy.
Right.
Um, and there comes a point, I think, in every privileged person's life where they can either double down or they can go, wait a minute, let me think this over. And he had his let me think this over moment.
Yeah.
And if you open the door, it's not, and I also like, one of my favorite things to do with characters and character journeys is to not have them change and become a new person, which I
Right.
think is actually pretty rare, but to let them adapt and alter some of the ways they approach the world, which I think is more realistic. That Gebelin is the same guy throughout the story, but he's expanded his view a little bit.
Right. Well, I think you hope that most people would, is like, if you presented with a certain set of facts that may not agree with what you thought all the time, one would at least hope that you're like, maybe you're right.
Right.
Or,
But there are people who don't, right? They
sure.
just cannot. They cannot. So that's why I find a character like Duen to be, in a way, as a writer, I find them to be like a MacGuffin, like a useful tool for the writing. But I don't find him to be particularly interesting to write. I like in my Court of Fives books, the major antagonist. There's a couple of antagonists, and one of them is the guy who becomes Pharaoh. They're not called Pharaoh in Court of Fives. There's a secondary character, and he's kind of just nasty, right? So he functioned in the plot, but the main antagonist, I'm always blanking on the names of everybody. Oh my God. I like him because he's not a nice guy. He's actually a pretty awful guy, but you can also understand why he does what he does. And then, so that interests me a little more. Or Crossroads, in which when the antagonist is actually a very complex and interesting person, but I don't want to say anything because
No.
It's a story that you have to read to get to the line at the end of the third book, and it's a lot. Anyway, it's one of my favorite lines I've ever written. So
No.
I don't.
Let's face it, Kate. You've written a couple of books at this point. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised that maybe you forgot a character's name.
No. That actually the name in Crossroads I know. I just don't want to say it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The name in Court of Fives, I just needed a little. It's Gargaron. It's Lord Gargaron.
Oh, okay,
but
gotcha.
it just took a little bit for it to filter down. But no, in Crossroads, it's that I won't say it because I can't. If you know it to begin with, it gives it away. Yeah. So, but anyone who's read Crossroads knows. They know.
Well, I always tell every author too, I understand the fact that if I'm talking to you about a book that's coming out soon, that's a book you wrote like 2 years ago, if not more. And you've probably written more since then, and you're trying to remember, is like, oh my goodness, that was 2 years ago. What did I write?
Well, no, it's true, because when I turned in the Witchrose's duology, since then I've written 150,000 words of Lady Chaos, the third Sun book, which is about half done, right? I have to write the other half. And then I've written another Witchrose novel, which I just turned in August. And now I'm working on, now I have a third book set in that Witchrose universe and Lady Chaos. So I'm like 350,000 plus a couple of short stories. So I'm like 350,000 words of writing away from the Witchrose duology. So that's the equivalent of like three and a half books or 4 books.
I'm glad you said that too, because I was actually sitting here trying to remember, and I was like, when we talked last time, it's like I just read Servant's Mage, and I just read Keeper 6, and I'm like, we were talking about another book, and it just like vroom right by me. And it was the Sun books that had just come out, and I think that's we were talking about mainly.
So the first 2 books of that space opera trilogy are published, and the third one is just going slowly, so it's been delayed, but it is half written. Yeah. Well, I always
Cuban wanted to say hi. So.
It's rough. It's rough to have a book that's been delayed because there are people waiting for it. And then especially now when there's a couple of very, very, very famous cases of people who didn't finish books or didn't finish a trilogy or a series or something. And then I always feel guilty. But anyway, let's move on.
Not that I was just thinking about a specific book when you said that, but we'll move on. Now I'm at the avoiding spoilers part. One of the things I loved about this book, though, and you said it's a duology. As far as we know, there's not another book. I got to the end of the Nameless Land, and I thought to myself, there's more to this story, but also I will oddly kind of be okay if this is it. I don't feel like every story has to wrap up every single loose thread. Um, so if we don't get any more in this series, I'm okay with that. But I can totally see more to be told if you ever want to revisit it.
So thank you. One of the things about the duology is there's a few mysteries that the characters don't know what the answer is. And there was no way for me to not make some kind of artificial, oh, I'll discover the secret, when they don't know. So will there down the line, I am hoping to bring back. I still have. I do have two more contracted books set in this universe, but they're about different characters.
Okay.
Each one is about a different set of characters, but it's tied to things that happen in this book, just not directly. I mean, kind of directly, kind of not directly. That I have the book I turned in is called, it hasn't been announced yet, I don't know why. It's called The Flower Court, and it takes place in the palace.
Yep.
About 6 months after the end of Nameless Land.
If you've read any of the books, you know the Flower Court. So
yeah, so and it's different characters.
it's just not Ellen's story, is
It's its own
what I'm hearing.
story, but it also deals with things that this book couldn't have, that the Witch Rose couldn't have dealt with.
Nice.
So there will be we'll see some people again that we saw in the duology, but it isn't a continuation.
Well, having read the first two books, I will be there for it because I love the universe that you've created here. And there's a lot of unanswered questions.
This won't, so I don't know what else. There's not much else I can say at the moment about the Flower Court, because it's complete. It's a single book that should be hopefully published in one volume, because there's no good place to split it. It's a little long, but it's a different vibe and a different aesthetic because it's set in the palace.
Yes, which I can imagine, because we have
from the point of view of servants, by the way. I want to say from the point of view of servants, not from the point of view of the upper echelon.
But yeah, for the fact that we've talked about them so much in the first two books, we've not actually been in the palace yet, so I don't feel like that's spoiler territory. So
no, there's no reason to be in the palace in this, and it's definitely no reason for Ellen to be in the palace. She's a humble deputy courier living in the provinces, which is exactly how she likes it, right? So
and something which she's reminded quite often during the first two books.
Yeah.
They are very big on their hierarchy.
They are very big on their hierarchy, and to people in the upper echelons, she's either someone who doesn't exist in any functionally important way, or perhaps, if they were to discover her secret, a tool to be used for their purposes. And there's no place between those for her, except for, and I want to say, one of my favorite things about this duology is the friendship that develops between her and the other warden. Does that count as a spoiler?
Not necessarily. Because you haven't told us what happens.
Because it just happens kind of naturally. But that's a place where she doesn't, that friendship happens despite kind of the gulf in their stations. And I liked exploring that, why it would happen, why they're just, and how that character, that other character, that warden is the product of being from the upper class, but also has the experiences of being a fairly ground level warden. So she's learned to negotiate. There's a lot here about negotiating different places that you might be standing in the world, I guess, thematically, maybe.
Well, I also feel, and this is also like coming from, I was in the military, and obviously you treat certain people of ranks a different, certain way all the time. But I've also found that there's a few people that, as long as you're not disrespectful, occasionally they like being treated like a human being instead of sergeant or colonel, or was like, every once in a while it's like, let's not do the pomp and circumstance and just treat me like I'm a human being. And I feel like where that's warden is coming from, that particular warden, who we won't say, enjoyed the fact that somebody was just willing to speak their mind about things.
Yeah.
And not worry about who it was being said to.
Yeah. And was just honest and friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine being someone who you imagine living your life knowing that anybody who talks to you, it might not be because of you, but because of what your background is.
Are you being nice to me because of what I can do for you?
Right. Or what benefit do you think you might get from knowing me, being able to say, oh, I know them.
I was on the red carpet next to so-and-so.
Yeah.
So, nope, I get that. All right. So this is the part of, I'm just going to ask you, is there anything else you want to talk about the book that hasn't been mentioned that doesn't spoil anything?
Well, that's such a tough question because
no is a perfectly acceptable answer.
I really loved writing this book. That's what I want to say. This book was truly a gift to me from wherever. I don't know wherever. I just said, I need to see if I still love to write. And I'm just going to like wander off down this path. I don't really know where it leads, but I'm going to try it. And I wrote this book really quickly, easily. And I loved writing it. And as I was writing it, I thought, yeah, I still do love writing. So in that sense, this duology was kind of a gift that art gave me.
All right. Then the one last thing I'll say about the book, because I'm going to word this very much so it's not spoilery to anybody who hasn't read it yet. There's another character that you wrote that was very much integral, but kind of secondary for especially most of the first book. And in book 2, there are 2 instances, and I think you're going to know which 2 they are, which I will not specify, that made me kind of fall in love with the Viper. You actually gave that character some personality, and anybody who hasn't read the book has no idea who the Viper is. You know exactly who the Viper is. But there's 2 characters, or 2, like I said, there's 2 things that happened during that book. And if you're confused, we can talk about it afterwards, so I don't spoil it for anybody. But there were just moments where all of a sudden you realize that this character, even though, again, another character with no spoken lines, has a personality that maybe she doesn't even understand. The other she. All right.
No, I'm not sure. Because I maybe it's because of the term Viper.
Well, you referred to it as the Viper.
You mean the Viper?
The Viper.
The Viper. The Viper.
The Viper.
The Viper.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even plant that. I love that Viper, by the way. Yeah. Like, who wouldn't want the Viper?
But like I said, in the first book, there wasn't much done with it. And I know.
Well, yeah.
But in the second book, there's a couple of parts where you're like, the Viper's got its own attitude and personality and wants and stuff.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. That's all I'm saying is I really appreciated.
I know why
that character in the second
has the
book.
Viper, but she doesn't, and she doesn't have a way of finding out yet.
Yeah.
I do have in mind, but it's not immediate, but I kind of know. But anyway, I don't want to say anymore.
No.
The thing is, these books, you get involved when you write. You get involved with the characters' lives, hopefully. You get involved in these bigger, at least I do, these bigger plots. And I don't have the ability to make neat little plots. My plots always kind of, they sprawl, like they're like on this and that. So I have these things that I can see these things that are happening a year from now, 2 years from now. And all I ever hope is that I live long enough to write everything that I want to write. So I don't know. That's why I exercise so much. It's like, I
No,
gotta
no,
keep
trust
going.
me.
Yeah.
Any reader with a certain size TBR is feeling the same way. It's like, I just want to get through my TBR.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't help because y'all
Yeah.
keep writing good books.
Were there any other questions
I don't
from
think there was a whole
the
lot of
people?
questions
Okay.
coming out of the chat. A lot of people are making comments and talking about stuff. I
Okay.
didn't have any more questions about the book itself. I did have a couple wrap up questions, real quick, unless somebody else has something else they want to ask. What are you reading right now, if anything?
What am I reading right now? So I just finished reading a fantasy novel called Asunder by Kirsten Hall, which is quite good. It came out last year. It does end with kind of a cliffhanger, and the second book isn't. I think she's still working on the second book. There's some resolution, but it's also kind of a cliffhanger, but it's very good. It's very good. And then I'm reading Peter Perdue's book called China Marches West, which is about the Qing Empire's conquest of Xinjiang province. And so that's an academic book, a history book that is I'm reading partly because I love history, but also because it's background for the book that I'm working on right now.
Gotcha. Right.
Which
And
is
then
about a
Chad,
frontier. You know, if you've read The Witch-Rose duology, you may have seen the term the Eastern frontier. So the book that I'm working on right now is set on the Eastern frontier.
Gotcha. Chad did have one question for you. I didn't get the reference, but he said you will get the reference. Which is better, West or Antir?
West. I have to say that. Because I was in the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism question.
Gotcha.
I fought when I fought in armor. I fought in the Kingdom of the West, but Antir, I believe, is the Pacific Northwest. So, but I never lived there, and I was never in the SCA and lived in Antir, but I grew up in there. So, sorry, I have to say the West.
No, that makes more sense to me now. That is my brother, and I
Yeah.
do know that he was in the SCA.
Oh, okay.
But that's why I
Yeah.
don't recognize it. I was not. All right. I think we actually talked about this last time, but for anybody who missed it, what is a hobby, skill, or accomplishment that you like to talk about besides writing sometimes?
I always say the same thing. Besides my Schnauzer, Finn, who's a very good dog, I paddle outrigger canoes for fun, competitively, and that is. It's hard for me to explain. I could go on for an hour about outrigger canoe paddling, but it is the state sport of Hawaii, because canoes are how the original inhabitants reached Hawaii. It's a big deal here, and I love the ocean, and I love paddling 6-person canoes. It's a blast. So
Okay. This may be another reference that you would get that I would not get. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's boy, that goes back a long way.
Yeah, apparently you two are having your own conversation at this point. That's my little brother too. He's probably
your little
talking about
brother?
stuff I should know.
Well, I mean,
I
I
use the
haven't
term-
been. I haven't been in the SCA or gone to an event for a long time. Yeah.
All right. And then what's usually my last two questions? I'm brain dumping. I know what the last one is. I'm trying to remember what the second to last one is.
You didn't write them down? I have to write everything down.
I sent them to you, but that doesn't.
Hold on, I can check.
No, I can pull it up too. I usually just. I've been doing this enough that usually I don't forget. And then this, for whatever reason, one of them is, oh, I remember what it is. Is there anything you want to talk about? Doesn't have to be book related, but anything you just want to say while you've got the floor.
No, I think we've covered a lot. I always hope that people will ask me questions, because usually they ask me a question that isn't something I would have thought of. I'm like anybody. My brain, I tend to like go around in circles about many of the same things, and it's fun for me. Oh, I do have something to say. If you like historical dramas, the one I always recommend, although it's a lot, is the Chinese historical drama Nirvana in Fire. It's 54 episodes. You need to like really plug in for the first 4 to 5 episodes because it takes a long time to get all the people straight and figure out the factions. But quite seriously, as a piece of dramatic narrative, it's superb. Maybe I've watched it more than once, and that's a big commitment to watch it more than once. Anyway, I always recommend that. There's others I've enjoyed as well, but that's my all-time favorite.
Nice.
Maybe it's one of my top 3 favorite TV shows ever.
Gotcha. Perfect. And then the last question I like to ask everybody, shout out to a bookstore of your choice.
Here on the island, the shop, DA, which is in Pigeon shop, which is down in Kaimuki, is a small independent bookstore. And then really any indie. I would just encourage you, find the indie bookstores in your area, whoever they may be. And if you can, shop there.
Yep. Especially if I realize authors.
Well, yeah, I mean, I realize that people can't always. Some people don't have one in range; it's too far away. There, I mean, for whatever reason. But if one can,
right,
I encourage people to do it.
Yeah, because like my wife's family lives in farm country, and there's no local bookstore anymore in that area. So,
yeah.
So I get it. If you have to use Amazon, shop at bookshop.org. But
well, no, you can't, because you can shop at bookshop.org. You can shop at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
And Barnes and Noble is, they used to be the big bad, but now they're kind of less bad because Amazon is the big bad. So,
Yeah, I love my indies, but I still have to admit I still miss Borders a little bit. Borders.
I really miss Borders. There used to be 3 Borders on Oahu. Now there is one book. Yeah.
But for whatever reason, that was always our go-to. I don't know. We always shopped at Borders. So
I miss them. I miss them. Yeah.
It's weird that they were a big chain, but they really kind of felt more local. So,
and supposedly that Barnes and Noble they brought in the guy who turned around Waterstones in England. And one of the ways he did that in England was to turn Waterstones into the Main Street bookstore in smaller cities and big towns, rather than having it be a big, mall store with no personality. So he wanted it to start to become part of the community. And I think that Barnes and Noble is trying to do that. They brought him over, and I think that they're trying to do that here. And I think they're expanding a little.
Gotcha.
In the U.S. So,
Nope. All good. But yeah, I agree. That was tongue in cheek about if you have to shop at Amazon, shop at bookshop.org. So
I mean, sometimes I can't find the book elsewhere.
No, yeah. I just, like I said, I would say first, foremost, local indie if you've got it. After that, if you want ebook, because they do ebooks now too, ebooks or physical books, I say bookshop.org because they give a piece to an indie of your choice. Or if you like audiobooks, libro.fm because they give a piece to the local of your choice. And then if you have no other options whatsoever, I would rather you pick up the book than not get it all. So I understand sometimes you got to go through the big A because I don't like to say their name out loud.
Well, they're tracking everything we say now. So
I can't remember what I was doing the other day. I wasn't even doing it on my computer, and I hopped up on my computer and there was a Facebook ad for it. I'm like, who's listening?
Oh, geez. Crazy times. Crazy times.
Well, it's been a little over an hour. Kate, as always, I appreciate your time. Love talking to you about this. Love this story. I know you said you weren't sure about whether you still wanted to write or not, but I have read the first 2 in the Inconquerable Sun. I read Servant Mage. I read Keeper 6. And the Which Roads duology has been my favorite of yours recently. I loved it. Loved it. I put it above all of those. And those were some pretty good books. So
I'm
you
glad you
still got it.
enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Gotta thank you for the chat coming in here. So I
Thank
think
you for being here, everyone who came to listen to the live stream.
Yeah. Well, ever since book 1 came out, I know you were on Nico's channel. I know you were on Fina's channel, and it's like I couldn't wait for book 2 to come out so that we could talk about it as a whole, as much as we can without spoiling it for everybody. So I appreciate that.
And I guess you can always keep recording, and then if we talk with all the spoilers, people who've read the book can like come and listen to the spoiler talk. Because that's something that you don't, when you do something like this for publicity, it's like you got to be so careful because some people haven't read it yet. But then sometimes people do want to, they want the dish, right? They want they want all the gossip, right? They want to find out, what did you really think about that thing you did to so and so.
I have seen that on a few book channels now too, especially if there's a couple of booktubers talking to each other, where they'll have the spoiler-free section, and then there's the if you don't want to know anything about this book, you better leave now because we're about to talk about stuff.
Right, about all the specific things.
Gotcha.
Like, did you read an ebook of Nameless Land?
Yes, I did.
So, did you see what he did on the cover? It's more visible on the print, on the hardcover, and it's hard to see. Look at her right arm.
Now you got me looking.
I know, I'm serious. It's fantastic. I didn't notice it. It took me.
Her right arm.
Her right forearm. It's hard to see.
Yeah, I think this is too small for me.
Size. Yeah, if you can. Well, if you have a chance, make it bigger. Not now, but at some other time. Get a JPEG and make it bigger, and just look at her right forearm.
Is there a little stowaway wrapped around there? Is that what they're trying to look at?
There is a little stowaway wrapped.
Okay, I had a feeling that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
I can kind of see the line, but because of the darkness and being on my screen.
Yeah. It's kind of subtle. It's kind of subtle. Yeah. But it's great. I love it. Yeah.
Looks like extra muscles in that arm. Like if you read
except
the book,
for the head. Except for the head, you can actually see the head.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, with the little tongue.
And Kai, I don't know who you are. You stop that. No, just kidding. I'm one of those people's like, sometimes I don't even like a movie trailer because it gives away something. It's like, I didn't want to know that yet.
I am agnostic about spoilers in the sense that I personally don't want to be spoiled except in very specific circumstances. If something is deeply stressful, I'll stop and then I'll look ahead. The Danish-Swedish mystery called The Bridge, where they find the body on the bridge, and they remade it in the US, but I didn't see that one. It's really good, but the second to last episode is so stressful that I stopped watching it and I went and found a thing to see what had happened, because it was too stressful for me to watch and find out. So, but other than that, I'm like you. I want to experience it myself and have all those things happen. But some people like this. Knowing the ending allows me to enjoy the journey more. For some people, that is the way. To me, that's totally legit as well. It's just like, how do we experience books? We just each experience them differently.
I will tell you, Kate, on the Which Roads cover, because I was just glancing at it at first and I didn't realize that these were people here. I really thought you were writing a book with like ram people and rat people, and I was picturing a whole different thing going into that book.
Yeah. They're the size of. I get why they did it that way, but the size of the statues is completely they're not that big. They're person size, but I get why they did it.
Yeah, I think you
And
just
so,
made it too easy to overlook. Because after I was read the book, I'm like, "What?" And then I was like, look at the cover again. And I was like, "Oh, there's people in there. I see
yeah,
what we're
there's the
doing."
two people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So did you have any specific questions about the book that are spoilers? Besides the Viper having a little bit of its own personality?
I don't know if I had questions about the book. I definitely had some feelings about the book, in and of the fact that, again, I loved kind of where you ended it, and that it left some things. It left some things untold or very wide open.
Yeah, we
And
don't know where the Viper comes from. And I know
and
people wanted that pat
yeah,
answer, but she can't, there's nowhere she can get it.
right. But I kind of love that, because let's face it, in real life, we always don't get the answers. We don't always
Yeah,
get the answers we want.
yeah.
But I will say, spoiler ish, first people. I loved the way you brought Gwevlin. Is that his name?
I say Gevelin,
Gewlin.
but yeah.
I loved the wrap up arc you brought him to,
Thank you.
which I think touches on spoilers, which is why I wanted to wait to say that.
Yeah, I wanted to, he's still the same person, but
Mhm.
he understands the world better now.
I also think we understand his motivations better now.
Yeah. 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 Yes. Yes. That's a good point. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like he's not always a good guy, but I also feel like a lot of times he's not a good guy because that's who he needs to be to do what he thinks needs to be done.
But, and also because when you are raised as a prince in a palace, in a deeply hierarchical situation like this, where the emperor has life and death powers over everybody,
Mhm.
they, you know, they're not like the princes, and especially the higher ranking princes, they are above everyone else. I'm not saying they are literally, I don't believe they are, right?
Mhm.
As the writer, but situationally in that world, they are. They can say kill that person and someone will kill that person. That's, I always think that's kind of a terrible way to have to live in the world for the person, that people who are vulnerable, but also for the person who has no conception that that's not good. you know.
I also loved the I did not see coming who Hemmerlin actually is, his
Oh
background.
good. Oh good.
That was that was a bit of a toss, a throw, and and the interoculator as well. And that's all I'm going to say about that. That was
Oh
that
good, good,
you
good.
had me going. I usually pick up on stuff like that, and when that happened, whatever that scene might be,
Yeah.
um, I was not ready for that.
So I have to tell you, this is a little bit of a historical thing. The I loved Anglo-Saxon history. I still do, but when I was in college, I took a class and read a lot about that history and stuff. And so felon, that name is derived from Athelstan. And Athelstan did in fact have a cousin who
Mhm.
was his aunt's daughter, who he was supposed to marry. But once he, and his situation was indeed that he was the eldest of his father's sons, because that is patriarchal society, but the one who was in some form less legitimate than them. Nobody
Mhm.
knows quite how that worked because the records aren't there. Um, and then, anyway, so a lot of that is me riffing on that whole thing. So that's a little bit of Anglo-Saxon history I just dumped in and then I mixed it up and used it. So
Nice.
I actually love the scene where they meet him for the first time because his character to me like hit right in the face immediately. There's not like, who is this person? It was like you knew who he was
Mhm.
immediately and you knew the kind of person he was immediately. And he's not, to me, he's a more interesting person than Lord Dwen. Lord
Yeah.
Dwen doesn't really, Lord Dwen's like, I don't know, just
Right. I never thought he
stomping
was an
around.
interesting
Yeah.
person. I just thought I was just wondering, was it fun just to write somebody where you don't have to worry about motivations? They're just a jerk.
Yeah, and I'll stick by my answer was that
No, that's
he was
fine.
useful. He was useful.
Yeah.
Felon was more fun to write.
All right. And Chadwick has shots fired here. And yeah, this one was another one, and she's trying to avoid spoilers a little bit too. But yes, there was a lot of we find out a lot of stuff in book 2 that was some of it I don't even know if it I don't even know if it was really hinted at in book 1.
Which family? Whose family history?
I'm thinking she's talking about Ao. That's just where I went with it, but I could be
Oh,
wrong.
that family history.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. Yeah.
Oh, and oh my goodness, I just blinked. The Atoner we get to meet in book 2. That one was a little rough. I'm saying
Thank you. Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you.
Little hit in the field.
Yeah, that was a crucial scene to write.
Yes.
And that was a tough one to write, actually, for me.
I think it also is the scene, though, that helped some of the rest of the cast understand Elle a little more.
Yeah, well, especially Kim.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah. So we nailed it. That was the one she was talking about.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, because we still at the end of book 2, there's still, and again, I'm not going to go too spoilery here, even though we already warned people that we're at the spoiler parts. But even how much did, oh my goodness, what's her name? The female prince in the Nameless Land, whose name just jumped right out of my head.
Eliawana.
Yes, thank you. How much did she know? I don't know if we ever actually found out how much she knew about all of that.
No, we don't find out how much she knew,
it gets revealed and somebody gets whisked away.
Yeah. So there's the question: is how much did she really know? How much did she guess but pretended she didn't, or didn't? You know what they say, didn't want to know.
Fair.
I think there was a lot of didn't want to know there. That's sometimes the easiest way to deal with things. For some people, that's the easiest way to deal with things like that. It's like,
yeah,
well, I didn't know.
I feel like there's a good chunk of people in the palace we'll do plural since there's 2 lands going on here, that are very much into the political intrigue and machinations and moving the pawns around. And there's the other side that are just like, I don't want to know. If I don't know, nobody's going to kill me.
Exactly.
So
the violence inherent in the system.
Yeah.
And the way in which some people can either give way or get killed. That's basically their option.
Because let's face it, sometimes it didn't matter if you were playing the game or trying to stay out of the game, you still got killed.
Yeah, and that's why I always think that sometimes there's an idea that you have to win for it to be a happy ending or a triumph. But honestly, there's a lot of people in our world for whom survival and having even a life with some joy and a small amount of self-determination, whatever that might be, that's a victory for an awful lot of people in this world.
Yeah.
Enough to eat, good boots, a shelter over their head. I think that stories don't necessarily celebrate that enough.
True.
And I get it.
Really
we want to do the princes and kings and stuff, but I think we can celebrate that as well.
I think you really underlined that with Ellen too, especially in book 2 when she talks about what she wants, and she really had very modest requirements.
Yeah.
Right down to a good pair of boots.
Yeah. Well, never go wrong with a good pair of boots.
All right. So let me ask you one more question then.
Okay.
And you may not be able to answer this.
Okay.
You talked about that you might have a couple more stories in this world, even though we're not following Elle anymore. Any chance we're going to see Captain Raven again?
Not in the next book, which is already done and turned in, and almost certainly not in the book I'm writing now, which takes place on the Eastern frontier. But there's a chance, yes.
Okay, because that was definitely an
There,
interesting character.
the only thing I'll say, and then we can be finished. The only thing I'll say is that I really, really want to write the book in which they go into the desolation.
Yes, we've heard a lot about it. We know
Yeah,
absolutely nothing about it.
yeah. I know at least one thing about it.
Well, I would hope so.
It's
Sure.
amazing. It's amazing how sometimes I know a lot of stuff, but sometimes I don't know much.
Gotcha.
Sometimes I don't answer questions because I don't know them. Sometimes I don't answer them because it's not appropriate to the story. But
Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. So the Flower Court has more. It's more palace intrigue in it, but from the point of view of servants, so it's different. You see it not from the point of view of the people engaged in it, but from the people of you who are trying to survive it. So, yeah.
I'm going to say one last thing. It's not a
Okay.
question, and then I'm going to let you have
Okay.
your day back to yourself. I do agree with you, though. I feel like a lot of times in a book, the mystery, the air of not knowing, can sometimes be better than any explanation the author can give us.
Yeah. It's a fine line to walk, but sometimes I like to yeah, I agree. I'm just going to say I agree.
Yeah.
I like mystery, and sometimes the mystery revealed works, and sometimes you would rather have just left it the mystery.
I'm just
Whenever
saying there's a lot of books
yeah.
I've read where my disbelief was suspended a lot more before they tried to explain it, and now I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
how anything works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, Kate, you've got a bunch of books we're looking forward to. Absolutely can't wait to see how Sun finishes up. Can't wait to revisit the world of the Witch Roads. And I always got an eye out for almost anything that you write. So glad that this book hopefully gets you back on your writing thing. No matter how you feel about whether you like writing, obviously it's your life. If you decide you need to hang up the pencils and the pens,
Oh no. That was back then.
no.
This book
I'm just
cured
saying,
me of that. Yeah.
if
Yeah.
there's some point you do, obviously, you've earned the right to enjoy your own life. I'm just letting you know that there are readers here that are still looking forward to everything you put out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I
All right.
appreciate it.
And thanks, chat, for hanging out. Thanks for throwing in some questions. Chad, thanks for bringing up random stuff. I had no idea what you're talking about, but siblings, that's what they're for.
Exactly. And Chad, I want to say you said he's your younger brother.
Yes.
I'm here, younger sibling solidarity.
All right. And give Finn a hug for us. That's the last thing we're going to say.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a good
and
one,
thank
everybody.
you to everyone here and everybody listening to it later. And thank you so much for having me on.
Appreciate you.